welcome back to my channel. Today I will be showing you how to do a full glitter plaid tumbler. This is best worked on skinny or straight tumblers. So first we are going to mix our epoxy, which I did. I am using CC DIY's Fast Set in this video. And you are going to spread a super thin layer. I based this white because I wanted the glitter to seem a little bit lighter. Once we get to the glitter part, you will see that it is a mixture of glitter. So I used Make It Pink by Peachy Olive Glitter, as well as Pinky Promise by Peachy Olive Glitter, Maraschino by Peachy Olive Glitter, and Brite by Peachy Olive Glitter, all mixed together. And then the two other main colors that will be used for this tumbler are going to be Maraschino and Brite. But I wanted to mix them together, and I wanted it to come off as more of a lighter pink. And just the Brite and Maraschino wasn't doing that for me, so that's why I added the other two light pinks in there. So once you spread a super thin layer, I think I'm using about 2.5 milliliters of epoxy, and this is a 30-ounce skinny tumbler from the Stainless Steel Depot. You'll see here, this is my mixture that I made. I basically just poured some into a cup until I got the color that I wanted. So I'm basing this with the mix. So say you're doing a black and red tumbler, like a buffalo plaid tumbler. Then you would just mix together the black and the red until you get a good mixture of both to where you can see both colors, if that makes sense. And then you'll base your cup with that. So this is my mixture that I'm going to be basing my cup with. And then we are going to add the checkered spots. So full coverage, because I didn't want to waste a lot of that glitter, I had to keep pouring it back into the cup and then pouring it back onto my tumbler. So you'll see this, and then we'll move on to the next step. So once I got full coverage on this, I realized it was a little bit darker than I wanted. So I literally just covered it in Make It Pink, which is super fine by Peachy Olive Glitter. It's very fine, so it'll go into all the crevices and make sure that I get the color that I needed. So as you can see, it got a little bit lighter, which is what I wanted for this design. So I didn't video it, but I added another coat of epoxy on top of it. You do not have to epoxy until smooth. You can just do one layer of epoxy over top. On this 30-ounce tumbler, I think I used about 35 to 40 milliliters of epoxy on top. So next I'm going to take this 1-inch painter's tape, which if you know me, you know I'm not a huge fan of painter's tape, but this is what worked best. So what you're going to try and do is find the center of the cup and do a taped line down it. So I used the bottom to find the center, which, it's tape, so it got sticky. So once you find that center line, you're going to try to evenly add strips of tape down it. So this is where I found the center to be. And then I added 2 or 3 more pieces of tape to make those other stripes. So when I did this, I held, it's hard to see, but I held it into a way that I could see that it looked straight to me. I eyeballed it. Now you could measure this if you wanted to make it perfect. That's your preference. Again, it's your tumbler, so do what you see is best. And I made sure that the lines were pulled down tight and made sure that they were sticking on all the edges, because we don't want epoxy to seep under and then the colors to mix. A tip that I have when you're taping, whether it be with painter's tape or electrical tape, is when you need to pull it up, fold the ends of it. It'll be easier to grab and pull and peel versus sticking them to the cup to where you have to use your nails to kind of scrape it up to a point where you can grab it and pull it. So next you'll see me add another 1-inch piece to the bottom. And again, I just evenly space them out so that there's lines going vertical on the cup. So once I had my vertical lines, I went ahead and started adding my horizontal lines. Now, when I did this, I started at the top just so I could get even all the way across. Now, this cup from Stainless Steel Depot is slightly tapered, so you will see that it is kind of some of the lines going vertical. The spaces in between kind of are a little bit skinnier than the top, but that's okay. It's not a huge deal. It's just because the cup is slightly tapered. You can get completely straight cups, but this is just what I have. So what I did is I took a little piece of the 1-inch tape and I put it on both sides so that I could then take the 1-inch tape and do my next line across like this and make it even. And once I did that all the way down to the bottom. And I do want to let you guys know that the cradle that I have my tumbler set on is just something that I made at home. I just bought PVC pipe from the hardware store and made it myself. And I find it very useful when laying decals, and it's amazing. So I will hopefully have a tutorial on how to make that yourself, or you can purchase them on Etsy if you don't feel like making them. But I promise you, they are so easy to make. So once you finish getting all the lines going horizontal all the way down, then we will move on to the next step. So now what I'm going to do is I am mixing CC DIY's Fast Set Epoxy Ultra Clear, and I'm doing very minimal. So there's only 5 milliliters in the cup, and I'm barely going to use that. And what I'm going to do is I am going to take the Maraschino color by Peachy Glitters, and I'm going to cover the open square portions that you see on the cup. So how you're going to do this is you're going to do a super thin layer in each square of epoxy, and then you are going to add the glitter, and then you're going to let it dry, and then let it cure, not dry. And then we will move on to the next step. But see here, I am literally just, super thin coat. You don't want your glitter to have wet spots. So you don't have to add that much. Just make sure that there is full coverage in each square. So the next thing you're going to do is literally just pull off all the strips of tape. You can do this probably about 15 minutes after 15 to 20 minutes after you apply the glitter. If you do fast set, I would say 2 hours if you used regular epoxy. And then there are those. And then you're going to wait for it to completely cure. And then once it cures, which I didn't show here, I don't know why, I don't have a video of it, but I used CC DIY's Quick Coat and I applied it to each of the glitter spots that I had just added, and that made the glitter stay into place as I added the tape over it to do the next step. So this taping part was a little bit more difficult because you're covering up what you need to know, like where it is. Like you need to know where these glitter squares are so that you can do the next step. So the way that I did it, and again, fold your ends so that it's easier to pull. What I did is with painter's tape, it's really easy. If you rub the tape down, you can see the line of where the other glitter pops up. So I kind of I didn't do everything at once. So I didn't do all of the horizontal lines at once and then all the vertical lines at once. I literally went back and forth just to make sure that I was hitting the spots correctly and I wasn't over covering it, because you want to line it up because you don't want your squares to be like weirdly even or one to overflow onto the other, or there to be a weird space of the mixed glitter on there. So I just tried lining it up. I ended up needing to use a smaller tape. I think this is 1/2 inch or 3/4. I'm not 100% sure. It honestly could be an inch. I could be using bigger tape than I thought, but you're going to put those on. Again, I just went back and forth, and you're going to cover. Basically, you're going to make lines where the maraschino glitter is, because everywhere else is where you're going to have the white. And as you can see here, I'm using my finger, my nail to show where those spots are. And that way I can cover it with tape and not mess it up. So because I'm using Brite, the glitter Brite with this, I didn't want the glitter to show up funky since it's kind of an opalescent. So I went outside and I based those squares that are open with white, flat white primer spray paint. So if you're doing another color, you may not have to do this, but I recommend doing this if you're using a white, because otherwise your white will show up it won't show up as white. It'll show up as a different color because the base color is different as well. So I definitely recommend spray painting it, waiting for that to dry, and then you are going to do the same thing as you did with the maraschino. You are going to mix up a little bit of epoxy, and then you are going to add in your white. So you'll see this here, and then after about 15 to 20 minutes, if you're using fast set, you're going to pull the tape, and it'll be about an hour to 2 hours after regular epoxy that you will pull the tape if that's what you're using. So again, this is me pulling the tape. Now after this step, depending on the colors that you're using, since my last coat was white, I'm not worried about adding that quick coat to avoid it going anywhere else. And instead of quick coat, you can always use clear Mod Podge or clear spray paint. But this is what it looks like. Slow-mo here. And once you're done doing that, you are going to add a layer of epoxy. So go ahead and add that layer to make it smooth. And I'm using CC DIY Fast Set in this, and I just cover the entire tumbler. Again, this is a 30 ounce, so I'm pretty sure I used 30 milliliters of epoxy to cover it. So once you epoxy, you can do the line. So you're going to go into Cricut Design Space and click Shapes, and then click Square. You're going to click that Unlock button when it comes to changing the width and height, and you're going to do the width at 0.1, so 0.10, and then you're going to do the height as 11.5. That way, if you have it's better to have enough than not enough. So at that point, then you're going to go to Actions, and then you're going to go to Duplicate, and you are going to have 11 total lines because we're just covering 11 portions, if that makes sense. So you want the horizontal and the vertical lines, and then you're going to cut it and be ready to go. So once you weed out all the excess, I just used my pin and started with the vertical lines first. I just tried to center the best that I could, and I went over the white and mixed color spaces because that's what I felt like looked best. Obviously, you can do it however you want. Originally, I was folding the lines over at the bottom, which you'll see me do. I ended up cutting off some excess, but I recommend cutting a little bit less than what I did, and then adding maybe a little bit of quick coat or Mod Podge to allow those ends to stick, because when I epoxied the first time, some of the vinyl started pulling up on the ends on the bottom of the cup, which leads me to have to sand it down and then add another layer. So I would just add a little bit of Mod Podge, let that dry so it sticks, and then move on to your next step. So this, you'll just see me evenly placing the lines. Once I start doing the horizontal lines, it will be, I try and start on the same piece every single time so that I have one space of where those lines are. And so this cup actually isn't going to be in its final form. I just showed all of this. I'm actually adding pictures and a name to this cup. But because they contain pictures for my customer, I don't want to put it on YouTube. So this is just basically a basic plaid tutorial. So yeah, once you're done with your lines, then you will epoxy probably two more times, just to make sure everything is completely smooth. After you epoxy it once, you could always add a name or quote or whatever your heart desires or your customer wants. And then you're done. That's it. It's not as hard as it looks. It definitely takes some patience, but after doing this, I really enjoyed making this cup. So this is definitely something I want to do again in the future with different colors. I think it's super cool. So yeah, just watch till the end and then you're done. I do want to add that using scissors was probably easier than the X-Acto knife because I didn't want to cut the other strip of vinyl. But if you use a super sharp X-Acto knife, you're going to cut off the strips. And in doing this, I wouldn't do it exactly at the top. I would just do it a little bit below the top. And you'll do that to each one, and then you'll also do it to the bottom as well. Again, I would leave a little bit more excess so that it's not starting to peel up when you epoxy, and then you're left with a bunch of lumps at the bottom that you have to sand down and then add another layer of epoxy. So there you go. So again, this is what your cup looks like. Again, I use metallic silver vinyl. I recommend 2 coats of epoxy. Unless you're adding a decal, then maybe 3. And that's it. So please like this video, subscribe, ask any questions in the comments, and please join my new Facebook group where I can answer questions personally a little bit more quicker than YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.